Great. Well, as Monty said, I've been asked to share a little bit about what we've done in terms of developing public evangelism and evangelists in Romania. And the way I thought I'd do that is by giving you an overview of the history of how things have developed. I want to share with you two things. The history of how Mission Weeks developed in Romania is what I'll put above this timeline. And below this timeline, I want to share with you what we've done intentionally in terms of initiatives and training and projects. So the first Mission Week that we had in Romania was in 2009. It began almost by accident, really. I was living in the UK working for UCCF, and I wrote to the IFES team leader in Romania and said, I'd like to bring some students out. It's not really a mission trip. I just want to show them Christianity in another country. But you know my gifts. You want to organize something, go ahead. And they ended up organizing what was the first Mission Week in Romania. We spoke to several thousand people on the streets that week, and we had a couple of hundred people every night packed in to hear talks. And this, for me, was the beginning, I think, of a vision of doing this in Romania, because the received wisdom in Romania and in many East European countries at that point was that you need, partly because of a legacy of communism, you needed this long period of building trust with people before you could talk about the gospel. What this event did was exploded that idea and showed that you could have your first conversation with a non-Christian be about the gospel and still have more conversations with them. It's a country at that point that had less than 20 years of freedom of religion, and so Jesus is not routinely proclaimed in the universities. What followed that period was a period really of randomness. There were 2 or 3 other Mission Weeks. Michael Ots did one, a group of Romanians did one. There was no kind of intentional plan. In 2012, together with some friends, and Christy's a board member of that, we founded a very small organization called Chrysalis. And in 2013, I went to Romania and met with the leaders of OSCE, the IFES movement there, and the leaders of CRU, Campus Crusade, and talked with them about how I'd like to come and help them catalyze public evangelism in the universities. Both groups were very enthusiastic. So in 2014, that's my 2 boys in the moving truck. Our family packed up and moved to Romania. Right after I moved there, Luci, who's here now, and Emmy, who normally comes here, came to Foyer for the first time, and they were blown away by what was happening, but they were also frustrated by seeing what was happening, because they said, how come that's happening in the rest of Europe and it's not happening in our country? We need to go back and spread a vision. And I said, that's okay. Like, we can go back and spread a vision if you like, but I don't think people follow visions. I think people follow stories. And I think we need to find a way to do this well. And once you can tell a story, even if it's a simple story as, we had an event, 20 people came to it, 10 were non-Christians, 3 joined a Bible study, 1 came to Christ. The moment you can tell that story, this will catch fire. So that led to a period of experimentation, really. Lots of disastrous, tragic stories. This was the Mission Week where Jesus didn't get mentioned till Thursday. And Mike York and I, the IFES team leader, on the way home from that conference, stopped at a stall selling bottles of homemade red wine, and that bottle was empty by the end of the evening. A lot of just difficult, hard things in that time. Until 2017, we hit on the model that works. And I just want to pause here a sec just to show you 8 years from the first Mission Week to finding a model that works, okay? 3 years of me intentionally investing until we found something that works. So often we hear from people, we tried it and it didn't work. That is our story as well. We tried it and it didn't work, and we tried it and it didn't work until we found out how it did work. I also spent a lot of time here going to student camps and conferences and hanging out with people in the movement and giving just a talk here, a talk there, meeting with the OSCE national leadership team, because at that point, I think, even though the movement was keen on it, I was the advocate for things there. Once that model was established, I would say even now, if you said to me, what does a good Mission Week look like in Romania, I'll pretty much tell you what we started doing in 2017. And at that point, it started really growing. We had groups where multiple Mission Weeks were happening within a year. This is where we kind of first established the model, and I can tell you more about the model if you like. This was a brilliant mission week because there was a group that was virtually dead, and there was a non-Christian professor who we connected with who said, my students need hope, I'll find you a room. And we ran this series of events on campus, and afterwards an on-campus student group was launched as a result of combining Christians and non-Christians on campus, which is a huge thing, by the way, for Romania, as it is for many post-communist contexts. The other cool thing that started happening in this period with the groups that were having 2 mission weeks a year was that I would go to a mission week, the second mission week of the year, and one of the members of the team would be someone who came to Christ because of the first mission week. Like this young lady came to the mission week as a result of a flyer on the street, came, really engaged with the talks, joined Uncover, came to Christ at camp that year. This guy was a friend of one of the students in Timișoara, had been having a lot of conversations about Christ, came and heard one of my talks, actually put his faith in Christ afterwards and got baptized shortly after. So this was a really good period, actually. Then came what I like to call the stupid pandemic, when I'm using my politer language for it. And that was really frustrating. Experimentation, trying different things. Deanna showed you all the stuff that they've been doing, so we certainly didn't let public evangelism die in that period, but we kind of lost that model that was growing momentum. Earlier this year, we had a conversation with Deanna. So Mission Weeks from the beginning have been a project between Chrysalis and OSCHAIR. And we had a conversation earlier this year about what can we do about public evangelism going forward. And Deanna has a really great vision of the integration of public, personal, and small group evangelism and how we can use those three in the relaunch of groups. And so we've begun doing that. And she mentioned Yash. This mission week we had a few weeks ago, we had 60 people the first night, 80 the second, 50 the third. At every event, more than half were non-Christians. And this is my favorite photo because the organizers sent me this the week after. This was their first weekly meeting the week after, and they had 60 people in the room, 30 of whom were people who come through Mission Week. And I think, personally, Deanna mentioned that some mission weeks are getting cancelled because of restrictions. It's immensely frustrating because I think we're at a point in Romania right now that if we could run physical mission weeks, the openness of people and the hunger is huge. We can have a huge impact. So that's our history. What we've done in order to catalyse this, I mentioned that I went around a lot and I was an advocate, but done some more kind of formal things. Just to share with you very briefly our approach, diagram stolen from Mike Breen in case anyone thinks I'm being original. We do 3 things. We think you need to do 3 things if you want to develop a skill in someone. Firstly, you need to teach and train them, like formal settings, seminars, conferences. Secondly, you need to model it. You need to show people a model of good practice. And thirdly, you need to coach them. And what I mean by coaching is this. I often tell people this. My father was a track and field coach. When I was 10 years old, he took me to the field near our house. He said, this is a javelin. This is how you hold it. This is how you throw it. Take it. I took it. I did it. He said, all right, that was okay. Actually, your hand grip needs to be like this. This needs to be like this. Do it again. Okay. All right, your stance needs to be like this. And coaching is being with people when they do it and having those conversations with them. And my view is that a typical evangelical approach to developing skills looks a bit more like this. We teach and train, of course, because we're people of the word and we like talking. We model because we model it kind of accidentally, right? Because we do the stuff and people watch us. We very, very rarely coach. And I think often coaching is the missing element in developing both organisers and speakers, because those are the 2 groups that we've been interested in from the beginning, are people who organise mission weeks and people who communicate at mission weeks. So the first thing we started was training a cohort of public evangelists. We wanted people who could talk in the university setting in an engaging way about Jesus. At that time, none of these people were in professional ministry. They were all working in the business world. And this was our first cohort. Me, Anka, Alexandra, Emmy, and Lucci, all except Alexandra, have been to Foyer before, so you may be familiar with them. I designed a training program that was 9 sessions that we kind of did one a month. We had things that we read, discussions we were having. Alongside this kind of structured element, I tried to open the door for people to speak. This is the first time, so when I was getting invites, I tried to hand them on if I trusted someone else. So Luci's first mission week speaking in Chisinau in Moldova. Here's Anka speaking at the science faculty in Sibiu. And I would also do a lot of this coaching. This is me and Anka before she gave that talk, sitting down over coffee, talking about her message. Here's Emmy interviewing John Lennox on stage. That first cohort has been really essential to a lot of what we've done. So Emmy became a board member in OSCE Chair. Luci is now staff with Chrysalis and the main Mission Week speaker in Romania. Alexandra is on the board with Chrysalis Romania. Anka helped set up our Romanian organisation. So actually investing in people gave us a backbone for stuff that we could do from there. So formal courses and conferences at that point. We also ran something called the Engage Conference, which was really born of frustration that we would ask Lindsay how many places we had at Foyer, and he'd say 5, or he'd think he was being generous and say 7. And we were like, no, we need 50. So we ran the first Engage conference, and Lindsay came to that. It's like Foyer in the storytelling and the seminars and modeling, but we had 2 tracks. We had one for organizers, and we had one for speakers, because now we had this good model, we could train people in that model. With our speakers, we discovered there were 3 big problems with Romanian evangelistic speakers. 1, they don't prepare. 2, they're culturally disengaged. 3, the substance of their message is not Jesus. They like to make a passing reference to Jesus. I want to see a good evangelistic message being 30 to 50% focused on Jesus. And so we wanted to teach people to speak Jesus in a culturally engaged manner and a well-prepared, excellent manner. We ran another Engage conference shortly after, and that same year, Luci and I were the main speakers at OSCE Chair's National Conference, and Dragos, who was finishing his term that year as General Secretary of OSCE Chair, said that the best thing that had happened in his time there was Mission Weeks. And I think from that point on, our work was very much completely integrated and owned by OSCE Chair, as it's continued to be. Since 2018, we haven't run a conference or a course. Chrysalis has, who I work for, because we do more than the stuff I'm sharing here, and OSCE Chair has. But neither of us in public evangelism have run a course or a conference on it. Everything that happened from that point was relational and organic. So everything we were delivering in conferences and courses, we began to deliver conversationally. I would be in a living room with a group of students and talk to them about everything that I would have done in an organiser's seminar. I did it conversationally, and Luci did it conversationally. And here's Larry. So people who were giving talks for us, we'd have a lot of conversations with them interpersonally about how to structure talks, how to do things well. 2020, the stupid pandemic came along. We ran some webinars. Lindsay did Engage in the University lessons from history. Nay did How to Read the Gospel with a Friend. And those were fine. They were fine. Lindsay and Nay are great, but online stuff is not good. They were okay for keeping things on the agenda, and we tried to just keep that conversation alive with the different student groups about when this is over, what are we going to do? When Deanna and I had this conversation earlier this year, Deanna asked us to do, decided to do a couple of things. She asked us to help with the relaunch of groups. She also asked me if Chrysalis would I haven't got a photo of us meeting together as we meet online, that's our Facebook group, but she asked if I would train speakers. So she suggested some people from OSCE Chair who probably are speaking anyway, so we might as well make them good at it. And a few of our contacts from Chrysalis, we put them together. So we've got 8 or 9 people where we're doing this fairly flexible seminar thing where we'll do a seminar and we'll talk about what we want to do in our next seminar and what we want to do in our next session. We're also converting all our organisers' training into a video series of 8 videos, each one being about 8 minutes long, with a discussion questions afterwards, so that people in OSCE Chair can watch those, have a conversation, begin by the end of that, have an idea of what their mission week will look like, and then we can come in and have a conversation with them and help them refine their plan. So in diagrammatic form. That is what occurred, and this is what we did to try and facilitate and develop people who can do that. Thank you.